What's up everybody, my name is Lauran and today we want to discuss a news item that came to light today, and that is about that the Metroid Prime Trilogy for Switch is apparently done and Nintendo is just holding off on it. And this is some information that came out of Jeff Grubb, who is a frequent guest on the Giant Bomb Show, and he came really with this news that Nintendo is holding off on this release right now. And apparently this is because Nintendo has only restricted Q&A, so quality assurance resources, and that was even made worse during the pandemic, due to which staff got tied up, and that is really one of the reasons that Nintendo is holding off on this release right now. Another thing is that Nintendo is using this title as a marketing event for Metroid Prime 4, which is going to be released in the near future. Well, it's probably still a couple of years away, so 2-3 years away. And so that is also an interesting thing, an interesting takeaway from this new information that we learned about it. And that is, for me, it's a very interesting thing what Nintendo is doing with this title, because actually, this is not the first time we're hearing that Nintendo is holding back on this trilogy, right, David?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, last year we already heard the same rumor that Nintendo has already finished developing Metroid Prime Trilogy for the Switch. But yeah, it really makes sense that they're holding back with the game and they're waiting to release it a little bit closer to the new Metroid Prime. But we're also, of course, getting another Metroid game, Metroid Dread.
That's right, we're getting Metroid Dread this year. And of course, I don't believe Nintendo really wants to, steal the spotlight from this new mainline Metroid game. I mean, that would be kind of foolish, definitely, because Metroid Prime is actually more of a side series of Metroid. Of course, they are great titles on their own, but it's really a different kind of, it's a different kind of path that Samus is taking. It's also in a different period in the Metroid timeline. So that's why they're probably holding off on it until Metroid Prime 4 is probably getting announced, because it would really make sense to use it as a marketing tool for Metroid Prime 4. And that is one of the reasons actually that Jeff Grubb says that it's going to be a marketing beat, so to say, for Metroid Prime 4. And in the meantime, and for me, David, this really sounds like this is good news overall, actually, for the whole Metroid series. Because to me it sounds like Nintendo is going all in on Metroid. I mean, it is unprecedented, basically, that in 19 years we haven't gotten a real Metroid mainline game, and we're getting that now with Metroid Dread. Then we're also getting, at the same time, within the next couple of years, a new Metroid Prime game and Metroid Prime Trilogy, which means, for me, it gives me a feeling that Nintendo is definitely not giving up on this very beloved series. And if you want to learn more about Metroid Dread, such as the planet on which it takes place, the new Emmy enemy, and of course the primary antagonist of the game, be sure to check out the Metroid Dread videos that we have on our channel that really discuss these subjects more in depth.
Yes, they're really bringing Metroid back into the spotlight there. It probably will take a lot of times from now on till we really see Metroid Prime 4. Of course, the development was restarted at Retro in 2019, so it still could be a few years away. But in the meantime, we're at least getting a new Metroid, and we're getting Metroid Prime Trilogy, and it's really going to be played by a lot of more potential players, because the Switch player base is huge at the moment. And of course, there are a lot of players who are too young to even may have played Metroid Prime or Metroid Prime 2 or Metroid Prime 3. I know for a fact that I never played the second and third one, so there's a lot of potential there just to get a lot of new gamers into Metroid Prime.
That's right, I just looked up the numbers before we did this recording, and we saw that the Switch at this moment in time is already at over 80 million sold consoles. I mean, that is amazing, just for this point in the lifetime of a Nintendo console. So there are a lot of potential people who can play now Metroid and that is really, and Metroid really needs that, because although, I mean, it is a very beloved series, it's not a secret that the Metroid series generally hasn't sold as well as Zelda or Mario, for example. I mean, the best-selling Metroid game is Metroid Prime, which is a fantastic game, but only sold 2.8 million units, and that is just not that much. So, and with the recent successes of other Nintendo ports, such as Skyward Sword, for example, which is already selling really well, and also Twilight Princess, for example, and Wind Waker, it cannot, I definitely expect that this trilogy will sell a lot better than the original trilogy did on the Nintendo Wii. However, because there are also motion controls involved with the original Metroid Prime Trilogy, this port is a lot trickier, or so that is what the previous rumors have told us, right?
Yes, of course, it's a first-person game, so the Wii motion controls will be very focused on that part of the game. So porting that over to a normal control, the Switch controls, that could be difficult test to complete. We've seen with other ports that just porting those controls over to the Switch has been somewhat a problem that delayed the development and the release date of those. You may like or dislike these ports. I think it's a really smart move of Nintendo.
I think the difficulty is there because the Switch controllers it's just not a Wiimote. The technology is apparently very different, and that's why it's not so easy to make this port. But we've seen Nintendo do it with Zelda Skyward Sword, so I have no doubt that it's possible. It's just a matter of like doing it, finding the right people, and maybe just finding a clever way to translate those Wii controls into Switch controls, into the Switch technology. So it's definitely possible, and they just keep holding back on it. And actually, I don't really mind. We're already getting a fantastic Metroid game probably this year, so I'm willing to wait a little bit longer to dive back right into the next Prime games and in the Metroid Prime Trilogy. Definitely interesting news, I would say. So just let me know in the comments what you think about this news, and that Nintendo is basically holding off on this Metroid game. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.